People don't distance themselves because you're wrong, but because your presence unveils truth they're not ready to face. You enter a room, and immediately the energy changes. It's not because you're loud, but because you're authentic. In a world full of masks and filters, your authenticity is both rare and sometimes too much for others to handle. You're not dramatic or intense, you're simply powerful. You've done the inner work and built a peace that cannot be shaken. When you show up with that energy, you don't need to say much. Your presence speaks volumes. That's the Stoic way. Calm, unshaken, firm in identity. The more you embody this, the more you'll see who's truly ready to meet you at your level. If that resonates with you, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. No pressure, just appreciation. Now, let's break down why your aura can shift rooms even without saying a word. Most people enter a room hoping to be noticed, but you walk in and the room notice you, even without trying. It's not because you're loud, flashy, or dressed a certain way. It's because you exude a certain presence, solid and grounding, as if you're not searching for approval. You've already found it within yourself. That alone disrupts the usual energy. When you enter, people pause their conversations, not out of fear, but because your presence carries weight. You don't enter with noise, you enter with calm. In a world that constantly rewards performance and chaos, quiet power can be disconcerting. As Marcus Aurelius said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When you choose stillness over reactivity, presence over performance, it challenges the expectations of others who constantly seek validation. There's a strength in silence, in not needing to fill every gap with words. Maybe it wasn't always this way for you. Perhaps you once over-explained, over-delivered, over-performed just to feel seen. But now you've done enough inner work to understand that true power lies in mastering yourself, not chasing attention. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." That awakening is what people feel when you walk in. It's not intimidation, it's presence. Many are still sleeping, but you've awakened. You've stopped trying to fix the discomfort others feel in your presence. That's not your job. When someone feels uneasy around you, it doesn't mean you're too much. It means they're not used to being around someone so grounded, so clear, so calm. Socrates reminded us, the unexamined life is not worth living. Your presence calls others to examine themselves, and that can be uncomfortable. Psychologically, people tend to be drawn to familiarity, even if that familiarity is chaos or insecurity. When you walk in, calm and unbothered, you create contrast. And contrast demands attention. Some will be drawn to it, while others will retreat, but none will remain indifferent. This is what you've mastered, whether consciously or not, emotional control. You don't let the room shape you. You shape the room just by being there. Aristotle believed that knowing yourself is the foundation of wisdom. You've taken the time to understand who you are, your values, and your limits. You've learned when to speak and when to stay silent. You've understood that not every battle is yours to fight, and not every stage is yours to stand on. This restraint, this is discipline and self-respect, and it's rare. People expect others to perform, overshare, or entertain. You just hold space. You listen, observe, and speak only when it's meaningful. That kind of energy doesn't just enter a room, it redefines it. You are living proof of what Epictetus taught. No man is free who is not master of himself. You've embraced that freedom. You've let go of the need to explain your presence or justify your silence. In doing so, you've become a mirror that reflects back to others where they're still not fully free. Not everyone can handle that, but that's okay. You weren't made to fit every room. You were made to elevate the ones that match your frequency. Stay grounded and let your silence speak volumes. The more you're anchored in who you truly are, the less you'll need to prove anything to anyone. Most people say they want honesty until they actually hear it. The truth, even when gently spoken, can feel like a slap to someone who's been hiding from it. You've probably noticed this. You don't play pretend. That unsettles those who've built entire identities around pretending. You don't engage in small talk just to fill time. You don't smile just to keep the peace. You speak from the core of your being, and when something's off, you name it. Not to be rude, but because you care enough to be honest. This kind of honesty is rare and often misunderstood. People may call you harsh, cold, or too much, but what they're really saying is, you made me feel something I wasn't ready to feel. Plato once said, "No one is more hated than he who speaks the truth." When you speak truth, not only with your words, but with your very presence, it forces people to confront parts of themselves they've been avoiding. We live in a world filled with surface-level talk, fluff, filters, and fake masks. But you're not built that way. You weren't made to blend in. You weren't made to smile and nod when everything within you says, "This isn't real." Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. That's why your honesty stings. You shine a light, unintentionally, on what others have buried. Think about that friend who asks for your opinion, but flinches the moment you give it. They wanted validation, not truth, but you gave them truth anyway. Flattery isn't in your toolkit, and that moment of flinching, that's what sets you apart. You're not a mirror that flatters. You're a mirror that reflects clearly. From a Stoic perspective, honesty is not just a virtue, it's a responsibility. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because being honest, especially when it's uncomfortable, may make you unpopular in the moment, but it makes you trustworthy in the long run. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be respected by the right ones. There's also a deeper reason why truth hits so hard. When you tell the truth, you create friction, and friction creates growth. Not everyone is ready for that, but those who are, they'll remember your words long after the sting has worn off. They'll think about what you said when they're alone, and maybe not out loud, but in their minds, they'll realize you were the only one who had the courage to be real with them. Aristotle said, "Courage is the first of human qualities because it makes all others possible." That includes the courage to be honest and to be the one voice in the room that won't simply nod to get along. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. You've probably been called too honest more than once, but let's flip that. What they're really saying is, you're not afraid to say what I'm afraid to face, and that's power, that's clarity, that's leadership. There's a kind of knowing that comes from what people don't say. You feel it, you sense it. It's like your mind is tuned to a different frequency, one most people don't even know exists. Someone enters the room with a big smile, saying all the right things, but underneath, you catch it, the tension in their shoulders, the tightness in their voice, the flicker in their eyes. Something's off, and you know it. That's not magic. That's emotional awareness. It's intuition, sharpened by experience, by observation, by pain. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What you've done is made the unconscious visible, not just in yourself, but in others. You've learned to read what's behind the curtain. Socrates believed wisdom begins with self-awareness, and when you develop that clarity within, it reflects outward. You understand not only yourself, but others, their patterns, their wounds, their energy, and that makes them feel seen, maybe a little too seen. The truth is, most people aren't comfortable being read that easily. It's vulnerable. It's exposing. When you see past the act, the persona, the performance, it strips away the illusion they've worked years to maintain. That can be unsettling, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence makes it hard for them to keep pretending. So when that gut feeling kicks in, trust it. Don't rationalize it away. Don't explain it to yourself in words. It's your internal compass, honed through silence, solitude, and observation. The Stoics called it proeresis, the ability to choose how you respond based on your inner reasoning. Your intuition is part of this. It's not a guess or a hunch, but the quiet whisper of the mind, telling you the truth before your brain catches up. Some people light up a room with noise. You light it up with presence. There's a pull to you, an energy that draws people in without effort. They want to be near it, understand it, maybe even borrow a little of it. But what they don't expect is the mirror that comes with it. Because getting close to someone like you isn't just comforting, it's confronting. You're not putting on a performance. You're not following the script most people do in social situations. You show up real, steady, and grounded. And when someone's not used to that kind of energy, it can shake them a little, like standing next to a fire. It's warm, yes, but it also makes you notice how cold your hands really were. That's the thing. Your presence exposes people, not by judging them, but simply by being authentic in a world that rarely is. Plato said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And you don't use your presence to manipulate or control. You just are. But even that is powerful, because when others are still figuring out who they are, your certainty feels intense. It makes them second-guess their masks, their stories, their comfort zones. Carl Jung talked about how your vision will only become clear when you can look into your own heart. When people are around you, they catch a glimpse of that heart-level clarity. And for some, that's inspiring. For others, it's a little scary, because it reminds them of everything they've been avoiding. So if people come close and then back away, don't take it personally. Your energy is just asking a question they're not ready to answer. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay. But the ones who do, they're ready to rise with you. Some people avoid being alone like it's a punishment. You treat it like a privilege. While others rush to fill their silence with noise, you've found power in the quiet. That doesn't mean you're antisocial or cold. It means you've discovered something most people haven't. Your peace doesn't come from outside you, it comes from within. In a culture obsessed with constant connection, solitude has become almost suspicious. If you're not posting, performing, or surrounding yourself with people, people start to wonder what's wrong. But the truth is, nothing's wrong. In fact, everything might finally be right. Because when you're alone, you're not lonely. You're aligned. You can hear your thoughts, feel your emotions without distraction, check in with yourself. No filters, no pressure. The Stoics believed in the power of solitude, for this very reason. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And it's in solitude that we begin to see the difference. You strip away the projections, the noise, the drama. You get to ask, what's real here? What's mine to carry? What's just static from the world around me? Aristotle called contemplation the highest form of human activity. Why? Because when you're not busy reacting to the world, you get to shape how you respond to it. That space between stimulus and response is where your strength is built. It's where your clarity sharpens like a blade. Carl Jung once observed, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." You've likely felt that before, the ache of being in a room full of people, yet still feeling disconnected. That's because you crave depth, not just presence. And solitude, that's where depth begins. So don't let anyone make you feel odd for enjoying your own company. Don't shrink your silence to match someone else's chaos. Your alone time isn't empty, it's sacred. It's where you refine your thoughts, heal your wounds, and build the kind of inner peace that doesn't crumble when the world gets loud. Keep nurturing it, because in that stillness, you find your sharpest clarity and your deepest power. There comes a point in life when you realize chasing doesn't work, not for people, not for love, not for recognition. And when that shift happens, something inside you settles. You stop bending yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. You stop explaining your worth to those who refuse to see it. You no longer knock on doors that were never meant to open for you. That's not bitterness, that's alignment. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're discerning. And that difference matters. Because when you've done the inner work, when you've faced your own shadows and learned how to hold space for yourself, your energy changes. It stops reaching. It starts attracting. What's meant for you begins to flow naturally toward you, not because you forced it, but because you matched it. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke about self-sufficiency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." That strength is the reason you don't need to chase anymore. Because when you know what you bring to the table, you're not afraid to eat alone. People might not understand it. They might mislabel your peace as pride, your distance as detachment. But the truth is, you've just raised your standards. You're not desperate for connection. You're intentional with it. You've learned that just because someone enters your life doesn't mean they're meant to stay. And just because something feels good for a moment doesn't mean it's aligned with your growth. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. And making peace with yourself, that's a daily habit. That's what makes your energy so steady, so attractive. Not the noise, not the hustle, but the stillness that comes from knowing you don't have to run after what's truly yours. So when the temptation comes to chase, to prove, to explain, to convince, pause. If it's meant for you, it won't require you to abandon yourself. Stay rooted. Stay selective. Because the more aligned your energy becomes, the more naturally the right people and opportunities will find you. There's something about true calm that's louder than any noise. You don't even have to say a word. Your energy speaks for itself. It carries a kind of quiet certainty, and that kind of presence, it shakes people, not because you're doing anything to them, but because you're revealing something in them. Your peace has weight. It reminds people of what they've buried under distraction, noise, and performance. And when they stand next to you, it becomes clear, sometimes painfully so, that they haven't found that peace within themselves. Your stillness highlights their restlessness, your groundedness makes their avoidance obvious, and your authenticity, that makes the mask they've been wearing feel suffocating. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So when people react strongly to your presence, when they pull away, criticize, or project, it's often not about you at all. It's about the parts of themselves they're not ready to meet. You're not provoking them with judgment. You're just holding up a mirror, and not everyone is ready to look into it. Stoic wisdom reminds us not to take that personally. Epictetus taught, "When someone irritates you, it is your own response that is to blame. You've taken that to heart. You've learned to stay centered, even when people misunderstand you, because they're triggers. That's their story, not yours." Socrates believed that self-awareness is the foundation of wisdom. And by simply being who you are, real, calm, unshaken, you invite others to become more aware of themselves. That's a gift, even if it doesn't always feel like one. Because not everyone is ready to grow. Not everyone wants to face what your energy quietly exposes. You don't walk around declaring your boundaries like a signpost. You don't need to. People just know. There's something in the way you carry yourself, in the way you speak, in the way you don't overextend, that sends a message. This is someone who respects themselves. And when you respect yourself, others either rise to meet that or quietly remove themselves. Either way, it works in your favor. You're not aggressive. You're not cold. You're simply clear. And in a world full of mixed signals and blurred lines, clarity is intimidating. Most people are used to bending, accommodating, apologizing for having needs. But you've done enough inner work to know where you end and where someone else begins. That's called self-possession, and it's magnetic. The Stoics would call this living in accordance with nature, meaning you've aligned your actions with your values. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's what you're doing when you hold your boundaries, not explaining them, just embodying them. Boundaries, after all, aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping your energy clear. They're filters, not walls. They don't scream, "Stay away." They whisper, "If you're not aligned, you won't stay." And that filter, it's how you protect your peace. It's how you make sure your space isn't filled with chaos, disrespect, or emotional freeloaders. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And part of that privilege is learning what you can and cannot accept. Your boundaries aren't selfish, they're self-honoring. They're the quiet architecture of a strong life. So keep them strong, let them do their job. You don't need to argue or over-explain. The people meant for you will feel them and respect them. The rest, they'll fall away, and that's not a loss, that's alignment in action. There's a quiet kind of leadership that doesn't come from shouting or showing off. It comes from simply being. You're not trying to convert anyone. You're not begging people to change. You just live in alignment with your values, and that alone shakes people up. They watch how you move, how you carry yourself, how you handle pressure without losing your center. And it gets to them, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you already have. Your growth is visible. Your discipline is felt, and that level of consistency doesn't go unnoticed. Some people will admire it deeply because it reminds them of who they want to become. Others might resist it because it confronts them with the parts of themselves they've been neglecting. But either way, your energy creates a ripple. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And that's what you've built. Habits rooted in discipline, focus, and self-awareness. You don't just talk about bettering yourself. You do it quietly, consistently, even when no one's watching. Especially then. Jung noted, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." And you've walked through that fire. You've faced the hard truths, made the hard choices, and emerged with a kind of self-respect that can't be faked. The kind of presence doesn't need to convince anyone. It speaks for itself. You're not trying to be a role model, but you've become one anyway, just by being real, just by doing the work, just by not quitting on yourself when things got tough. And here's the truth. The right people, they won't feel threatened by your growth. They'll feel inspired. They'll see your light and use it to ignite their own. So don't dim, don't shrink, don't second-guess the path you're walking, just because others haven't found the courage to walk their own. You're not here to lead with noise. You're here to lead by example. Keep doing you. The ones meant to rise with you will. Some people fill every moment with words because silence makes them anxious. But not you. You don't fear the quiet. You own it. There's something powerful about the way you sit with stillness. You don't rush to fill it. You don't fumble for the next sentence. You let it breathe. And in doing so, you create space, not just around you, but within others. That space, it's where truth starts to echo. When you're silent, it's not empty, it's charged. People feel it. They sense that you're fully present even without saying a word. And that presence, it carries weight. Not the heavy kind, but the real kind. The kind that makes others suddenly aware of how much noise they've been using to distract themselves. Jung once said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing, which makes my life worth living." Your silence operates the same way for yourself and for those around you. It's not just about stepping away from the world, it's about stepping into something deeper. Sometimes the deepest connection you can offer someone is simply sitting with them in full awareness. No words needed. You've probably had that moment when you sit with someone and feel more understood in 5 minutes of silence than in hours of conversation. That's the kind of space you offer. Your calm doesn't just soothe, it reflects. It holds up a mirror. And that's why people feel so much in your silence. It's not about withdrawal, it's about presence. The Stoics revered stillness. They believed that calm was a kind of strength, a discipline in itself. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And you've proven yourself not by shouting your story, but by sitting with it, by letting your stillness speak volumes. There was a time when you bent over backward, trying to explain yourself. You wanted people to get it, to get you, to see your heart, your intentions, your depth. And when they didn't, it stung. So you tried harder. You over-explained. You defended your character. You watered yourself down to be more palatable, more acceptable, but not anymore. Now, you've stepped into something deeper. You've realized that your energy does all the talking you need. You don't have to convince anyone of who you are when you're already living it. That kind of calm, quiet, rooted, unwavering, it's rare, and it shakes people, not because you're trying to, but because most of them are still caught in the exhausting loop of seeking validation. Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself." That's exactly what you've done. You've stopped outsourcing your worth. You've stopped explaining every boundary, every decision, every feeling, just to earn someone else's approval. You know who you are, and you trust that the people who need to feel that energy will. No pitch required. Carl Jung put it best. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You've earned that privilege through pain, patience, and persistence. And now that you've become that version of yourself, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't justify, doesn't shrink, you move differently. Your confidence is no longer loud. It's embodied. That's why people feel it before you even say a word. The Stoics taught that we should be indifferent to praise or blame when we're living in integrity. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, because truth doesn't always get applause. Sometimes it gets silence or distance or criticism, and you've learned to be okay with that. So let others talk. Let them misunderstand you. You don't need to explain your piece to people still at war with themselves. You don't need to prove anything. You live it, and that alone speaks louder than words ever could. Insecurity has a funny way of twisting the truth. When someone hasn't figured themselves out, when they're still wobbling between masks and mirrors, your confidence doesn't comfort them. It confronts them. You walk in with clarity, calm, and self-respect, and suddenly they feel exposed. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your presence highlights everything they haven't resolved within themselves. That's why they may label you arrogant, when in reality, you're just sure of who you are. You're not trying to be better than anyone. You're just not trying to be anything other than yourself. That level of self-possession is rare, and to someone who's never tasted it, it can feel threatening. Carl Jung called this projection, the unconscious act of displacing our own unacknowledged feelings onto someone else. He said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When someone throws shade at you without real cause, chances are they're wrestling with their own shadow. You're just the surface it's bouncing off of." You've likely experienced this. The person who says, "You think you're better than everyone," when you never implied it, or the one who accuses you of being distant when you're simply setting boundaries. These aren't reflections of your character, they're reflections of theirs. And once you recognize that, you stop internalizing what was never yours to carry in the first place. The Stoics would urge you to stay rooted in your own reason. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength is exactly what you've built, the ability to stay centered even when others try to pull you into their chaos. Don't shrink, don't start doubting your truth because someone else hasn't found theirs. Let them have their story, let them work through their projections, just don't absorb them. That's not your job. Your job is to keep walking in your peace, your purpose, and your presence. Because what's real doesn't need defending, and what's projected isn't yours to carry. This moment, right here, this is the shift, the one where you stop asking, "Am I too much?" and start saying, "Maybe they were just too little." It's when you stop contorting yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for your truth. You no longer edit your tone, water down your opinions, or shrink your spirit to avoid making others uncomfortable. That's not confidence, it's liberation. You've realized your light isn't meant to be dimmed just because some people haven't adjusted their eyes to brightness. And that's okay. Truly, not everyone is supposed to walk with you. Some people are only equipped for surface-level connections. They want ease, not depth, validation, not honesty, and your energy, rooted, real, unapologetic, challenges that. It doesn't make you wrong, it makes you rare. Socrates once said, "To be is to do." And now you simply do you. No disclaimers, no softening the edges for the sake of keeping peace. Because any peace that requires self-abandonment, that's not peace, it's quiet suffering. Carl Jung also spoke to this when he said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." You've done that. You've come face to face with your strengths, your shadows, your scars, and you've accepted all of it fully. That kind of wholeness isn't just powerful, it's disruptive, especially to people who are still trying to piece themselves together through other people's approval. The Stoics would say you've begun living in accordance with nature, your nature. Epictetus reminded us, know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly. And that's exactly what you're doing. You've stopped performing and started embodying. You've outgrown the need to be liked by everyone because you've grown into the strength of being respected by the right ones. Let them misunderstand, mislabel, or even disappear. That's not your loss. That's space clearing, space for alignment, space for elevation. Because your energy, it's no longer up for negotiation. It's sacred, and the ones meant for you won't just accept it. They'll rise to meet it. You were never too much. You were just too real for a world still learning how to face itself. So keep walking in your truth. Keep honoring your energy, and never dim your light to soothe someone else's shadow. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, there's another video waiting on the screen that's just as powerful. Trust me, you'll want to see it. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal, a space for the thinkers, the feelers, the ones who walk with quiet power. See you soon.